We're starting the final section now. Everybody is relaxed. And before we proceed with this part, I know everybody is excited for the party. You guys want beer, maybe some food. This is all coming. Don't worry, it's getting prepared. So right after we finish with the questions, then we'll proceed with the party. So first, before I continue with this session, I want to thank our sponsors once again, companies that supported this MageConf. You can see their logos on promo material here: Magento, Ultrino, Magento Association, Vimo, Adwix. I didn't forget anyone.
Ultrino.
And Ultrino, yeah, I said Ultrino, and Snowdog, and also Interactive Force. So thanks to those companies. And what is also very important, I want to thank the team that worked today on putting this conference together. We had in every room a moderator and there's a person responsible for technical aspects. We had people helping with the registration, and all those people were volunteers. And I would like you guys to stand up, please, who helped today with the conference. Don't be shy. Come on, Victoria, I can see you. Voa, everybody. Yeah, please. Yep, and now I guess you guys, pretty smart crowd, already figured out how to ask the questions and also game the system with some fun, which is good. And if you have not figured this out yet, you need to go to slido.com, and there you'll enter the hashtag of the event, MageConf. You'll be able to ask questions, you'll see the list, and you'll be able to upload them. But we have limited time, so please think about the questions you ask. Is it worth everybody's time or not? And just to warm up, I guess I'll start with an easy question coming from myself to all of you in the audience. Did you guys enjoy MageConf today?
Yeah.
Woo! We can do better. Вам сподобався MageConf сьогодні? Okay, so the next easy question now goes to the panel. Will Magento support MageConf next year?
So yeah, we're glad to announce we decided we're going to support it next year. So if you enjoyed Camp and MageConf 2020, right, next year, keep updated. And Adwix did a great job, so we're going to partner with them again. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now let's go party. No, just kidding. All right, so I guess I'll start right away with some questions that we have. There is some interesting one. Magento architecture is changing very fast. It's hard for us to follow that speed. What would you recommend for the community?
Okay, I guess I'll take it. So the funny thing is that I think the same about overall software architecture best practices. They are changing too fast, it's hard to keep up with them, right? And technologies are changing very fast. It's hard to keep up with them. And front-end technologies are changing very fast. Cloud technologies are changing very fast. Even PHP frameworks are changing very fast. Everything's changing very fast. The competition on the commerce market is fierce, right? I don't know. Fortunately for Ukraine, Amazon is still not there and probably not be here for a while. But you have to have a tool in your toolkit that will help you solve the problem. So yes, Magento tries to keep up with the speed of overall technology change and overall best practices for software architecture and software application design. The good thing about, I think, that we are trying to do for you to keep up with how Magento is changing is we are very open. We have architecture repository. You can see all the design proposals there. One big disclaimer, if a proposal is approved and merged, it doesn't mean it will be implemented tomorrow. It doesn't even mean that it will be implemented next week, right? It means that we conceptually agree that that this is how Magento should be built. And sooner or later we get to that implementation as a separate, either as a separate project or as a part of functional project. Many things that you heard today, many presentations that you heard today, are actually talking about short to long-term future of Magento. So we are sharing it far in advance. A lot of things we share far in advance conceptually with you, so you have understanding of where all the things are moving and be prepared for that. So yes, again, my answer is to keep up with the changes of architecture of Magento. Follow our Slack. We have a bunch of Slack chats. PWA, app design, follow our architecture repository, follow documentation, and just keep up with the technology. Read books, learn stuff on Coursera, and certify yourself. And none of this will be a surprise for you. Magento is a big commerce platform, and we are not moving fast. We're not innovating a lot, right? And which is good because that's what we should do, innovating in infrastructure, in technology level.
So in short, your answer is read books.
Yeah, read books.
Okay, so I see a couple of questions which are related to PWA, and actually I was also thinking about this for the warm-up. During this conference, MageConf this year, we didn't have topics about PWA, and actually we didn't have submissions of topics about PWA. So, but in the broader sense, does it mean there is any change to the direction? Because it used to be some hot topic, and we are kind of halfway there, and people are wondering what is PWA release date, which is of course a vague question, which is there is no such thing as PWA release, but in general, can you please a little bit expand on the status of PWA right now, and when can we expect some more improvements to it, and how maybe community can also help you doing this?
So I guess I'll jump in on this one. The team is hard at work right now. I think what you're seeing is not that we don't have a lot to talk about, but there's a lot of interesting work we're working on delivering right now. The Peregrine components within PWA will be full parity with the B2C functionality by the end of the year, right? That corresponds with also GraphQL being having full parity by the end of the year. We expect in the next few weeks to have an extensible Vinya available, right? So that you can actually begin using Vinya much like you use Luma today. So there's a ton of work going on that, especially in the next, 4 to 6 weeks, you'll see continued progress. We're due to drop the 4.0.0 next week, maybe. But there's a million different things going on with PWA right now. If you want to get involved, go out to GitHub, right? The PWA roadmap is out on GitHub. You can see what's out there available to participate. We're seeing a lot of amazing contributions coming through right now.
Yeah, and okay, so another question was regarding the certifications. Are there any plans to expand the certifications to PWA kind of related areas? That's one thing. And other related to certifications was about the localization. Will there be maybe any possibility to take them in different languages, like Russian or Ukrainian?
I can take this. I'm not responsible for that at all. I'm not really responsible for anything.
I've always wanted to do this on stage. I'm a very serious person. Sorry,
I had to do that. So the opportunity presents itself. Certifications, certifications, there will not be localization. Believe me, it is one of those things that is requested. I do still work with the certification team regularly. There is the person, this guy Peter, who's really the big force behind the certifications and kind of how we are able to actually, write them in a week and have them live within like a month or so. It's been kind of transformational for how we do certifications, but he has extensive experience and trying to keep up with localized versions. It just does not work. And so at the end of the day, it's just not something that we'll support. Sorry for that. I know it is a little bit. We always do have someone who is not a native English speaker in the certification authoring sessions, right? Because English is not the world's most wonderful language. I think we can all agree. And we want to make sure that if you're having any difficulties you encounter on the test should not be a result of the language. Now, will there be certifications around PWA? I believe that is on the roadmap. I think I heard that said. It would be strange to me if we, built this big thing and then didn't represent that. I mean, certainly like the JavaScript certification that we have out there, I think would need to be at least sort of looked at in the context of PWA once it's a released thing from us.
All right. We have some question about availability of Magento's Enterprise Edition, how it used to be called, now Magento Commerce, for non-partners, but individuals who would like to contribute to it. Is it planned at all?
Good question. So we discuss an opportunity how we can provide access. It does not mean it's going to be open source. We talking about providing access to our Magento Commerce instance for developers. Right now, partners can do it, community insider program, which low-level stuff, which everyone can join. There is not much requirements. We provide access to them. Also, right now, we're talking about providing access to Commerce Code for marketplace extension developers, because we want extension developers to create cloud and Magento Commerce extensions first, and complement with open source. And there is also a lot of discussion about what kind of tools and process we can implement to give access to this code to everyone. It's still ongoing, but saying this, yes, there is a lot of discussion and there is progress going step by step. We start from partner right now, insiders. It's going to be a marketplace, and next steps already obviously going to be entire population of community have ability to use code for development, but not running stores for sure.
It's been a question that I've encountered and I've relayed into the company for a long time. So hopefully, we'll get to a place, because the reality is there are a lot of people who have to work with enterprise code who are not working for solution like official partners. That's been true ever since I've been around. And I do know that one of the kind of vectors that you can get at access to, like official access to enterprise, is through the technology partner program. It's a lower entry point, I think, from financially, and it's not so restricted by region.
Mm-hmm. And just to update you, Ben, on the question about certifications, I see some frustration still coming in about the language complexity. People seem to disagree. Like some words, somebody was given an example of the word slip, which can have different meanings.
What?
Slip. Like
slip.
Not sleep, but like slip. Something under something else, or
What the hell does that mean?
I don't know either, but apparently that's in certifications probably.
Well, it's a perfect example though. Like when and I, of course, ideally, unfortunately, you have to take the test to sort of find these things out. But when you when these things happen, absolutely, this is feedback that we should get, because we have the ability to update that language.
How would you recommend if somebody went through the test and they're frustrated with the language and have some particular examples? How would they report it?
You can send an email. I believe it's certification at. Well, actually, I don't know what it is under Adobe. Just send me an email.
Okay.
Seriously, just send me an email. I'll make sure that it gets on their radar.
But it would be difficult to give some concrete example because people would not remember. And
you don't. Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Perhaps we need maybe a different mechanism for.
It's a tough thing to go through. I mean, one of the other things that we do have though is, so we look at when certifications are released, we have the ability to look at how the questions test, right? If everyone is getting a question right, or if everyone is getting a question wrong, it is a bad question, almost certainly. We look for a certain percentage relative to the set of the data. So that's one way that we have uncovered some questions that are, that were either the question itself or the answer, the distractors were something in there was just ambiguous and problematic. That's how we tend to find those. So this usually is a problem more on the certifications that have just been released because they just haven't been put through their paces.
All right, and let me switch a little bit back to Magento's technical stuff. In general, people wonder what will be the next big features in Magento. That's one thing, and the other, there are a couple of questions related to performance and in particular to front-end performance. Like in the stock page speed insights, Magento does not score that high. And do you guys plan to kind of improve the benchmark? What can we expect on that side? And what kind of new features you guys plan for?
I think especially on the front end side, 233 has quite a bit of fixes in it for front end, specifically to help out with page speed scores. So we're continued to we're absolutely committed to continuing to deliver within the existing front end experience. As you look out new features, I think next year will be a lot of investments in B2B. So as you kind of saw on the slides that I showed this morning, right, we're looking around B2B buyer workflows. We're looking at the B2B parity with PWA and GraphQL. So I think there's going to be a lot of things interesting coming in from that aspect. I think the general availability release of product recommendations early next year is going to be an amazing feature.
Mm-hmm. And
on front-end performance, I can add definitely our ultimate solution to that is PWA project, but on Luma today, yes, there are some improvements coming into 3.3, and also we have one important aspect: the customer sections load, the legendary request that kills performance of 40% of Magento sites because it's misused. That API, customer section load, the API that's used to load customer data from browser, right? The API has problems with convenience. Very often it's misused, and we see customers very often have 12, 14 customer section load requests per page, right, which is crazy. So some of it is caused by inconvenience of API, some of it is caused by bugs. So we, with 233, right, we fixed all of the, at least we think we fixed all of the bugs with that API. So it should significantly improve performance of the sites that are upgraded to the latest version. Also, there is a big project led by Andrew Levine on front-end performance optimizations, and there is a newer bundling tool. I think it was mentioned a couple times today that's being polished now that pretty significantly also improves performance, front-end performance.
Yeah, and I see people wonder what about more front-end topics for the next year at MageCONF, so we'll take that feedback and we'll be focusing on that as well. Thanks for your feedback. And on the performance side, just probably to wrap up this topic, there is somebody asking like a really concrete question, but I don't want us to go too deep into details, maybe one or two ideas of where to go or where to dig. Somebody's wondering how to speed up the site with 2 million products and 10,000 categories. Is Magento suited for those cases? And if yes, what specific improvements would you recommend?
Again, almost the answer to almost every question about Magento, whether it's suited or not, is of course it depends, right? And depending on depending on other dimensions. So this data is not enough. You have to understand how many data dimensions, how many operations, how many write operations are there, what functionality, what other functionality. I would recommend to use for such cases if you really don't have anyone to ask. So here you have people to ask. There is a bunch of people from Magento. Go find one of them, talk to them, and they'll help you. But MageCONF, unfortunately, does not happen every day. So for those days, you can go to Slack chat, community Slack chat, and there is at least up design room. There is performance room. There you can ask questions like that there. And I'm pretty sure, especially UA community room in the Slack is pretty active. And there is a lot of funny, sometimes sarcastic people, but also they can be useful there. So you can use those at least those channels for that, to help with that.
Judging by the questions, I guess those funny, sarcastic people, they also came here today in the room talking about exchanging iPhones for Lada cars. So there is a question on Magento 1. I think in the broader aspect, we all know that Magento 1 end of life is sad, but people still wonder, how about Magento 1? So I guess the question would be, is this date firm? And can we for sure know that Magento 1 will not be supported after June next year? And what's going to happen?
This date is firm. I mean, there is no interest internally in looking at moving that date.
All right. Then the next question is when the marketplace will be updated to Magento 2. Magento extension marketplace.
Yeah, but just if you Magento marketplace running Magento Cloud 2.3.1 latest version, and so I don't know where it's coming question.
I don't know.
So yeah, just again, Magento marketplace. It's Magento Commerce Cloud 2.3.1. Period.
Okay, somebody's wondering why Magento Adobe didn't organize the conference itself like it was several years before.
I can take it. We had office here, and we have people, and we have group of people working on all these events around. Right now we don't have, but we have great community. And we start thinking about last year, so we approached Atwix and Slava and say, can you help us? Because we don't present here. That's just basically the answer. And we know, and everyone said everyone likes this, so we want to keep going this way. And I think it's just proof again our community is amazing and can do things, and we just can support and will support it.
And from ourselves, I would add that we'll be sending out a survey after the event, and we really want to hear from everybody. Please take your time to fill this info in, and I promise you that it will all be read and will be taken in account when we'll be organizing the conference next year to make it even better. So getting back to technical stuff, people are asking about the documentation for PWA. When will it be?
There's, it's pretty. Documentation for PWA is pretty extensive. There is a whole website, and it's. I know Magento has been very, very good about documentation the last couple of years. So it turned out. People, so in Magento 1, I always joke about that. In Magento 1, people complained there was no documentation, and then Magento 2, we added a lot of documentation, but nobody reads it. Well, some people read, but there is just Google Magento PWA Studio documentation. You'll get to the site, and there is a lot of details about it.
Yeah, you should. I mean, and it's also similar to DevDocs. I mean, you know, if you do see something missing, especially if you're trying to. Especially if you're trying to get started, that's a critical, and they're actually working on onboarding right now. So it's kind of critical that if you do see something missing or you're not able to get from point A to point B when you're getting started, absolutely let the team know.
All right, so one takeaway, we'll probably have pre-moderation of questions for next year.
Or maybe beer here, right, and we can keep talking.
Yeah, so community wonders about the end of support for Magento 2.2.x. It's December 2019. Does it mean there will be no security updates and patches after that date, or not?
Yeah, I mean, when we we will do one final release in January. So just as we've done with 2.0, with 2.1, we do one last patch release with all of the current fixes. But after that point, we won't be porting any security fixes to 2.2 anymore.
And people asking about also PHP 7.2 end of life in December 2020. Will this affect the roadmap anyhow?
No, so 2.3.3 adds PHP 7.3 support. So we're trying to continue to keep all of those infrastructural components up to date on a very frequent basis, and we're trying to do that earlier and earlier in the year. Last year we were very late in releasing those updates in December. We're delivering them in Q3 this year. My goal is for us to be delivering those in Q1, Q2 as we move forward.
And speaking about the releases, there is a question about community contributions. And I guess it's not quite correctly formulated because the author assumes that it gets into quarterly releases, the contributions. And what's the cadence for those community contributions? People asking how can they be released into minor patch releases faster?
Actually, all contribution which merged until our code freeze day before server regression will go to this release anyway. I think is a question. In fact, like 2 weeks ago, Matt and I was sitting and talking about can we decouple open source Magento releases from commerce to have ability to move more frequently and keep commerce, the same cadence, maybe even lower, because what we learn, merchants don't like to do upgrades very often because it's very expensive, costly. We're trying to reduce, but it's still some stress on them. And can we do open source, with the cadence when we have a lot of contribution coming in? And I would say we have process and tools which we may allow us. We still investigate it if community interested to do these releases or not. How much they're going to be involved in delivering this and how it's going to affect commerce. So I don't know who asked this question, if there is some thoughts about this, feel free to come to me later and discuss, because that's exactly what we were considering talking. Should we start to release more often open source release by community with community, or it's enough to do it one per quarter or for commerce one?
Absolutely. I mean, that feedback is critical as we're trying to make decisions and continue to improve our process, right? So as I mentioned, earlier during my presentation, these conversations are how we got security-only patches, right? So if you have a passion around something you think you can help, improve, come talk to any of us. We've got quite a few. Community maintainers, the Magento employees here. Any of us are happy to have those conversations and really take that feedback.
Right, and the question, I guess, a little bit particular technical, when Zend1 dependencies will be filtered out from Magento.
Okay. I already during my talk today, I already said I only draw presentations and send emails, so I cannot commit to code delivery. There was, I don't think we can commit to that date, but I think that will be gradually that code is cleaned up.
I can add. So Zend1 started decoupled with, a couple of years ago by David Manners, last time community member, and he did a lot of work to remove dependencies and replace with lesser than. It means maybe follow Anton answer. As soon as community going to consider it's like critical, feel free to jump in. We're going to help him and that's going to happen. So the beauty of Magento, you basically in charge of decision how it's going to look tomorrow. If you don't like what you have, just start working, contact community engineer. We're going to help walk you through the process and get off with it.
Yeah, and there are many questions that in general are asking, like what will be, again, like what Adobe will change in Magento over the coming years, and maybe without some particulars, like in general, the direction and what can and should we expect from Adobe. I guess Ben has covered this a little bit on his presentation. Maybe not everybody was there, and maybe you can take it at a different angle as well.
See, they let me answer these kinds of questions because then, then there's they can deny it later, right? Like, oh, that crazy Ben guy was saying this stuff. It's what we know. Let's talk about what we know. We know that even before Adobe, we were putting much more power into your hands. That community engineering, that's the story there. As Max was just saying, I mean, you all basically really are now much more able to inform what we're doing, and then also able to just do the work. I mean, you deliver a feature, guess what? It's probably going to go in there, especially if we weren't going to, and we weren't going to deliver it ourselves. I think Adobe's strategy, what I'd said in my presentation earlier, Adobe needs to talk about an Adobe story, right? Magento is a very specific thing, and that means a specific thing. Will Magento be around as part of Adobe in 3 years? I mean, who knows? It doesn't matter. Magento belongs to its ecosystem, right? Much more than it belongs to the company that's been behind it. Everything special about it, really, it ultimately goes down to you. I mean, we could sit there and build the software all day long. Actually, hopefully some of our team members do. Build the software. It doesn't go anywhere without going through someone else's hands. I mean, it's really, that's just the way it works. So I honestly, the only thing I care about is that everyone walks away from here, understands that there will be some transformation happening. I don't know what it is, but regardless of the direction it's going, you're going to have more and more power as time goes on. You will be much more in control of that brand, of this application. So you could kind of start with that. I mean, I know it makes sense that we're going to be, obviously we are doing work to combine Magento with different Adobe enterprise facilities, features, products. And those obviously target a very high end of the market that Magento itself, didn't. A lot of the work in Magento has not been at the top end of that market. So take some information from that, right? The Adobe story is certainly an enterprise story. Are there designs to go mid-market? To take things more mid-market? Definitely heard it talked about, but that's going to be. We'll have to wait and see what comes out.
Yeah, and that's.
And I would really like to let them clarify everything I said.
No, I think just adding to it, right? That it's a really interesting story about what those integrations look like. The community's driving the Adobe stock. Integration, right? And that's not targeted at enterprise, right? We've done Adobe Launch, right, out of the community side. So there are a lot of those efforts going on around. Adobe has so many different products, right? There's so many different opportunities across all of our different types of merchants to look at where those integrations make sense. In addition, the path we were already on around enabling headless commerce, about developing rich experiences, right? That actually tees us up very well with doing more of those integrations. It's work we were already doing anyways. It's work that was already on our roadmap. So our vision, even when we were acquired, was very highly aligned with where some of the other products in digital experience sit.
Yeah, and I guess there is some kind of frustration maybe from some people on Magento going up market, and I guess it has two sides to it. Like, from questions perspective, one is that Magento is becoming more expensive lower-end merchants that Magento 1 used to serve, maybe no more ideal customer for Magento 2. So I'm not sure if people are really worried about those merchants, but I guess they're worried about their businesses where they used to serve this lower-end merchants with Magento 1, and now with Magento 2, maybe they're struggling to find the same amount of clients or the same kind of clients. What would you answer to those people? What would your recommendation be? Is there a way to make Magento 2 more accessible, or should they look elsewhere?
Well, PWA is part of that story, right? I mean, PWA should save. We're operating on the theory that PWA will save. We'll save some time. We'll ease some development, right? And in general, where the architecture is going, should make that better. Why are you always typing funny shit while I'm talking? It seems like that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So
I'll buy a pair.
Oh, the socks, yeah.
Yeah, they'll suck. Sorry.
Do you want to add
yeah,
something?
I mean, don't forget Magento 2 open source is free and accessible to everyone. There is a lot of members, developers, community size. We're still committed for small, medium business. We're speaking about Soho, open source might be best fit, but entire business going forward. And this complexity is not driven by architecture decided to have fun, driven by requirements which real market going. And if you speak about, cases, and when I mentioned we have 60% deal merchants right now, more or less has B2B integrations. Even so, they're not pure B2B businesses. They adjust to the market and provide this option. So this Magento gonna be open source. Is open source, was open source, and this product free for use for everyone.
I see there is a question about the language of the presentation. Somebody is guessing 99% of participants are Russian or Ukrainian speaking. For why 2/3 of jokes are in English? That's the question. So first, I'd say that the data is wrong, because it's not 99%. If you would just calculate, even from 700 attendees, 1% would be 7, and we have more than 7 English speakers here. So if we want to be, and I guess we need to take maybe a broader approach to this. First, we want to be an open community, because if we just have Ukrainian speakers here, I don't think we'll really have access to all the knowledge we need to evolve as Ukrainians or Ukrainian-based companies and people. And if we want to have speakers here who are really recognized, who are well known in the community, those speakers, they speak English. And if we invite those speakers, they also want to have some English content. So that's one side of it. But the other side, I guess that question comes maybe perhaps from a little bit of frustration, because maybe not everybody is able to grasp the full beauty of Ben Mark's jokes and language. And,
Well, I mean, in their defense, they're not great jokes.
yeah, so that certainly is a fact, and we are aware that not everybody has a high level of English, but in our profession, that's a crucial skill. If you want to be a developer, a Magento developer, I mean, all the documentation that's coming from source is in English. All the content internationally is in English. And if we don't open up to this, if we don't embrace this, I know this can be painful, but it's like growing your muscle. You need to practice, and that would really give you a benefit. And not just with the knowledge, but you'll also be able to work with the clients where you need to know English. You will have better access to jobs. So while it might be difficult, but certainly I would recommend to learn English. Yeah.
Da.
Da.
Talk.
That's the 3 words.
Did you want to add anything?
No.
Okay.
I just joke. I think Matt and Ben just don't want to learn Russian or Ukrainian. That's a problem.
Yeah. So,
Well, as I've said to other people, every time I try and speak Ukrainian, you tell me I sound Russian.
all right. So I guess we'll skip some particular technical questions, and we'll let you guys hunt the Magento people at the party. But yeah, don't make sure that you block their way to the exit so they don't escape from the party until the ends for everything, but maybe we can top up with the question to Ben Marks, perhaps, how to become the next Ben Marks.
Well,
And
I'm sorry. I want to clarify what he just said. I mean, you can fine if you block our way to the exit. Do not block our way to the beer.
Okay.
Okay. That's just want to make sure we're on the same
Yeah,
page
but
there.
in the broader context, I guess the question is not about Ben Marks, obviously, but how to get involved in the community and.
Do you have any idea how ridiculous it is that I'm up here, that I'm at all a part of this, right? You know, when I think about it, I mean, hey, I enjoy it. I've, like said earlier, I've visited 50 countries with this job. I have my cholesterol is through the damn roof because of this job. I've achieved a lot of things. I have like extra 20 kilos here. Seriously, 100 kilos is just not comfortable. But you know, it's just another story of transformation. I mean, you know, a guy from South Africa came up to me earlier, right before my presentation, and I'm like, damn, dude, don't make me cry before my presentation, because he wanted to take a picture to share with he's worked with developers in Nigeria, in a team in Nigeria, he's working with developers in South Africa, you know, and they know who I am. But you know, how I got to be in the videos is completely by accident, really. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't set out to do this stuff. But what really gets me, again, is that this whole thing, Roy Rubin and I went on a hike. This is just a 20-minute story. Roy Rubin and I went on a hike last year, and I asked him the question. I knew what the answer was. I said, you know, did you set out to do all of this? And I knew the answer was like, yeah, no way. And his answer was yes. He set out when they saw the need for something like Magento, what they wanted to do. He thought the price that people have, the business have to pay for serious enterprise, you know, like e-commerce software, is way too much. The barrier entry is way too guarded. You know, WebSphere, there wasn't much back then, beginning, you know, the mid-2000s. And then there wasn't really much else to use laying around. The only thing we had was OS Commerce. That's how I taught myself PHP, by the way, and I don't think I ever fully recovered from that. So he set out to build a software that would actually empower e-commerce. It would bring the power of custom commerce to merchants of all size, and by extension, to all the people that were necessary to serve those merchants. And because of that, we have this, you know, this amazing $1 billion per year service economy. And I personally, I have watched, I mean, when I got hired at Blue Acorn, I was employee number 1. I left, there were 60, I had 19 developers under me. I watched people, you know, build careers. You know, they had families, they went on vacations, and well, in the States, they were able to afford their health care and fund college. Things like this. You know, this story is repeated all over the world throughout the years. That's why I get so, you know, to be quite honest, fired up and emotional about this, is because like when we do well, we as a company do well, you all do well. When we mess up, we hurt a lot of people. Hurt. And by extension, you know, as an ecosystem, we all have to look after this. But that's the thing. The Ben Marks story is your story. It's your story. It's the independent developer who now runs an agency of 30 people. I'm talking about you, Sergey, Altrino. You know, it's Slava. It's your business. It's relationships. It's opportunities that expose themselves all over the world. I mean, that's the real story of Magento, and that I want that to continue to be the story of Magento. So that's it. But also, if you want to be me, you better have a really, really awesome travel expense account.
Right. I guess that's more true than anything, and it's a nice ending to the conference because really a lot of us here because of Magento. Everybody's here because of Magento, and a lot of us built their businesses, their welfare, and Magento has been a driver of huge change in lives of thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. And I guess there is no better testament to that than having such a great crowd today. So thanks everybody again for having this conference, for putting together all the content, for attending. Thanks to sponsors, and let's go have beer at the after party. Thank you.